On Radio 97, it's time once again on this Thursday morning to talk law. Our resident lawyer, Despina Priala, of boutique law firm Priala Legal in Runaway Bay, with us each and every Thursday. She brings her legal expertise and she provides some general advice on hot topics around the nation and around the world. She has experience that spans more than 25 years in areas of property and commercial law. She also prepares wills as part of estate planning and litigation. With us once again, hi Despina.
Good morning, Wayne. Good morning, Brooke.
Good morning, Despina. So last week was a very interesting week because new legislation has been officially proposed for the sunset dates in Queensland. And this is huge news. And they're following New South Wales by the looks of it. So can you tell us a bit about this new sunset date legislation possibly going through?
Would love to. So being in the off-the-plan space as we have been for many, many years, we always keep tabs on any legislation that will affect off-the-plan projects and contracts, meaning people who buy off the plan from a developer and they sit around and wait for that development and project to be completed. And what Shannon Fentiman has announced, and Parliament was sitting last week, so she announced it then, as you can, and obviously would when Parliament is sitting, as they were last week. So she's announced new laws for restricting developers to be able to terminate contracts under sunset date provisions. And that is huge. So you may recall last year, Shannon Fentiman made a public announcement about these proposed new laws that she was thinking about, and she asked for public feedback, and there was a public consultation process, and people were able to go online and provide their feedback. And she says in this article that was posted, it was posted last week, that she's taken buyers' views into account and she's considered those, and now she has announced that these new laws are going to be considered. Now, these are not laws in force. So we just want to be clear that these are proposed new laws that she has announced. Okay, and we haven't read the bill yet. So I'll be doing that soon once it gets published. But let's talk about generally what we think they're going to be and how it may affect buyers.
Yeah, okay? Because of course this will have a big impact, won't it?
A massive impact. And this has come about from the last 12 to 18 months, 2 years of developers in certain cases, not all developers, terminating these off-the-plan contracts under sunset date provisions. So we just go back a bit. What does that mean? So when you sign an off-the-plan contract, the laws are very clear. New South Wales and Queensland, off-the-plan contracts must have a sunset date. A sunset date is the date by which the developer is to complete the project. So whether it's 18 months, which that's the maximum time in Queensland for land, or if you're buying a unit in a project that's going to be built, like a townhouse or a mid-rise or a high-rise, the maximum time in Queensland at the moment is 5.5 years. So between whether it's 18 months or maybe 3 years, 4 years or 5.5 years maximum, there always has to be a sunset date in off-the-plan contracts that a developer discloses to buyers up front. So when a buyer signs a contract, they go, oh, okay, well, the maximum time I'm sitting around waiting for the project to complete is 18 months, or it could be 3 years or 3.5 years, whatever the position is. So they're aware of it up front. That's a requirement at law. So then, because of what's been happening in the construction industry, some developers, not all, I mean, some of them have been caught out with these rises in construction costs. They haven't been able to complete the development, or they've seen the market value skyrocket and they've said, you know what, maybe we should just sit around and wait until the sunset date comes and goes. And then we can just cancel these contracts and terminate these contracts and sell the lots at a higher price. And this is why these proposed laws, or the announcement from Shannon Fentiman, has come about. It's because of the reality of what's been happening in Queensland. And because this was happening in New South Wales quite a few years ago, the laws changed in New South Wales as well as a result. And what she is proposing from the information we have so far is that it looks like it's going to mirror the New South Wales position. So what we're talking about is in New South Wales, developers can't just terminate contracts when you get to the end of the sunset date period. They can only do it under certain conditions. They've got to get the consent of the buyers, or they've got to go off and get a Supreme Court order. So it's not just a magic press a button, we've come to the end of the sunset date, bang, terminate contracts, see you later, buyer,
Yep.
and then I can sell at a high price. There are conditions that have to be met. And what Shannon Fentiman has proposed, what I've read so far, is that you've got to get the consent of the buyer, or you've got to get a Supreme Court order. Now, how that's going to look and how that's going to play out later on about, well, what do you have to prove in the Supreme Court? Who has the onus of proving what? And I think what it will definitely do, though, is the developer is going to have to put up something to be able to say, look, we just can't complete, or this is the reason why we haven't completed the project by the sunset date. So I think it will turn the tables where the developer will then have to be more proactive, because not all of them do this, but some of them have, where they've got to be more proactive. They know that when they get to the end of the sunset date, they can't just press this, button and use this termination right. They're going to have to prove, well, why isn't the project completed? What's happened? Because if the buyer doesn't consent, which is what happens in New South Wales, then they've got to go off to the Supreme Court and get an order. And that's not just something easy that you just get an order in the court. And I think issues like, well, if that happens, who covers the costs of going to the Supreme Court? So if the buyer doesn't consent, does that mean that the developer pays for the costs? How does that wear for a buyer who doesn't want to incur all these costs but doesn't want to consent either? So there's a lot of issues at play. And for me, I suppose one of the most interesting things to find out when these are announced properly further, and then perhaps when we see the bill and we get to comment on the bill in public consultation, is, are they going to be retrospective? So that's going to be really interesting, because typically laws are not retrospective, and there's a lot of people out there that have signed off the plan contracts with very long sunset dates. So is it going to be a case that once, if the laws are passed and they're in place and they've got royal assent down the track, if that's the case, will it mean that any buyer that's under a current contract with a sunset date, do they get the benefit of these laws, or will it mean only those contracts that buyers enter into after? And that's going to be a huge issue, I think.
Yeah, because there'll be some people that could be 4 years in waiting for their unit to be completed, and then what?
That's right. And then if you don't have it retrospective, I suppose you've got an argument that it's not really perhaps fair for all those buyers that are sitting around and waiting. But maybe it is. I mean, they've decided to go under a contract, and maybe they won't have the benefit of the new laws. So it's definitely a space to watch, but this is the first step that Shannon Fentiman's taken. I'm very pleased to see that. I think that we should mirror the New South Wales position to a certain extent, and it definitely will be a game changer in Queensland for off-the-plan projects, for developers and for buyers. So it's a space to watch, but I'll definitely keep you informed.
This has obviously taken a while to get to this point. As you say, New South Wales already has these laws in place. So there must be a real need, an unmet need in Queensland, because if there was a series of, or well, a chance for people to give their feedback, obviously the Attorney General got plenty of feedback saying, yes, we need these laws. She
did. She got a lot of feedback. I'm guessing. I haven't read the feedback, but I'm guessing. But see, there were real life situations that were happening in Queensland. There was and it's been reported, the Hillview estate at Maudsley, where buyers' contracts were terminated after 18 months. Then you had a project called Elevate Ormo in Ormo, where there was land again, 18 months, contracts were terminated. And then you had another estate in Yamundi near the Sunshine Coast, where this happened again. So this has come about just like in New South Wales. The laws were changed because developers were doing this and buyers were complaining.
There's a reason.
There's a reason. And this has been happening in Queensland for the last few years. So the Attorney General has sat up now, and listened and said, oh, maybe we should really look at changing these laws.
Love it when the government listens. That's awesome.
Happens on occasion.
On occasion. So when do you think Fentiman will have an answer?
Look, this is the other aspect. Law changing is very slow. Yeah. So, I mean, we've just had the property law bill, which has changed the Property Law Act in Queensland after several years of consultation. I hope that this particular announcement that she's made, I hope it does not take several years to come about. And I don't think it will, because we're just isolating an issue of sunset dates. We're not like the Property Law Bill where we basically rewrote the entire Property Law Act since 1974. So, I mean, I think this will be something that will come about a lot quicker, but as to how long that will and what that will look like, you're probably looking at a minimum 12 months, I would have thought.
I was going to say around a year, maybe we'll have an answer.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, tune in 1 year from now and we'll have the answer for you.
Any updates, that all the listeners will get that from us. So.
Yeah, we'll have a chat. Awesome. Thank you so much, Despina. And coming up next, a question about house deposits from Neil. Good morning, Neil, in Murwillumbah. Despina has the answer for you coming up on Breakfast Radio 97.
Are you confused about legal jargon? Do you need legal advice but don't know where to turn? Tune in to Talking Law with Despina Priala every Thursday morning at 8:30 on Radio 97. Despina, a leading lawyer with over 20 years of experience, will demystify the law and provide practical advice to help you navigate legal issues. Whether it's a family matter, a property dispute, or a business concern, Talking Law has got you covered. Don't miss out on this valuable resource. Tune in to Talking Law with Despina Priala every Thursday morning at 8:30 on Radio 97.